Once again, thanks for pressing the play button. JazzTalk.News, that's JazzTalk.News, can be now found on Spotify, iTunes and other well-known platforms. You can also see us on the podcast page of JazzInEurope.com. Now enjoy the show.
Get totally jazzed. Jazz Talk News with Nigel J.
My special guest on this episode is Sam Morrison, an American soprano saxophonist and alto flute player. He's a composer who replaced Sonny Fortune in Miles Davis's band in 1975. Davis supposedly said, "I haven't heard that much fire on the saxophone since Trane was in my band." Sam and I talk, I ask him questions and I hear backstories from him, and we listen and discuss 3 tracks that Sam's played on. In fact, he's played on all 3. 2 are composed and produced by himself, and the tracks are called Peekamoose Blues, Eternal Hexagon and Seattle IATT. The last track is played by The Leap, who is an ad hoc supergroup consisting of drum and electronic percussionist Michael Shrieve, playing with Santana, reed specialist of course Sam Morrison, well known for playing with Miles Davis, and the synth player and laptop operator Dr Patrick Gleeson, who's played with Herbie Hancock and Julian Priester. Sam, welcome to the show. How are you today?
I'm fine, thank you.
Sam, it's really great to have you here, and I'm looking forward to playing 3 of the tracks that you chose as tracks that you really like and enjoy, that are special to you. But before we get into that, I'm fascinated to know a little bit about your previous life. So I'd like to ask you questions about the past, and it might be a cliche, but everybody knows you as a saxophone player. But did you first start playing the saxophone, or did that come later on in life?
Oh, it came pretty early. I started out on clarinet when I was 6. There was a clarinet in my house because my brother had played it and given it up. And I think I was in 2nd grade when they were taking band members and new band members in elementary school. And so I started out with the clarinet.
What inspired you to say, I'm going to move away from that? Or when you picked up the sax, was there any sort of musical inspiration that led you to do that? What was inside you when you said, hey, that was a choice I want to make?
My dad came home with a saxophone one day. My dad was a doctor, and one of his patients gave him an old saxophone. I think I was 6th grade then.
Mm-hmm.
I had already been playing clarinet, for 4 years. I remember sitting in with a wedding band at my cousin's marriage party, and I think I was 8 years old.
Wow.
Maybe 8 or 9, I forget. So I guess I had already been bitten by the performance bug, I guess.
Yeah.
And I started playing saxophone, I think, more seriously, maybe in 7th grade.
Okay. And then obviously certain styles of music inspired you. Did you sort of play a wider range of musical genre, or did you focus on particularly one area? I mean, obviously you're really, really well known for jazz music and your connections to Miles Davis, but let's just step back a bit from that. Was it jazz was like a love for you, or was there other types of music?
Was drawn to it, I guess. I remember the first jazz record I got had to be 7th grade. I got the Benny Goodman Band reunited because I read a review of it in the New York Times, in the Sunday Times. I bought the record. Benny was phenomenal.
Mm.
And there was a reunion band with Gene Krupa and Teddy Wilson and Lionel Hampton. So that was really my first exposure, I think, to real jazz.
Yeah.
And I don't know, a year or so later, I think I was listening to Cannonball, and then I got into Trane, Miles.
Yeah.
All in junior high school.
Yeah. And of course, that would have been in the days of when it was a real ritual, wasn't it, to sit down and take the LP out of the sleeve, clean off the dust, go over to the radiogram, gently put the needle down, and then go and sit back and really immerse yourself in the music.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, this was the 60s.
Yeah, it was the 60s. It was great, wasn't it? Sometimes I miss that whole experience.
Yeah, it didn't take too long to get like totally immersed in it. I bought A Love Supreme, when it first came out.
Excellent.
Was pretty blown away by that.
Okay, well, listen, let's move forward to, I guess, 1975 was a key year for you.
Mm-hmm.
You played with Miles Davis at the Newport Jazz Festival, amongst others. I mean, I want to know how that happened. Can you share that with us?
Well, it was a sequence of events. Left college a few times and gone out to the West Coast and lived around San Francisco. And I met up with Michael Shrieve and recorded with him. And on the recording was Michael Henderson, which was Miles' bass player.
Okay.
Michael and I hung out a little bit, and he told me that Miles might need a saxophone player soon, and he was going to recommend me. So this was 74, I guess. And then a few months later, I had kind of reached the end of my staying out in San Francisco, and I wanted to move back to New York. And so I had just moved back to New York, and I got a phone call that Michael Henderson had called and was in Miles' room, wanted me to call back. And so I called back, and I was only in New York for maybe less than 2 months. And I flew up to Boston that night to play with Miles, to audition, basically.
Yeah.
And I got there, I played the second set, and at that point, he hired me and replaced the saxophone player that night and played the third set and joined Miles. This is at Paul's Mall in Boston.
Wow. How did you feel?
If you had asked me, the day before, you could do anything you want in the whole world, what would it be? I would have said play sax with Miles.
Yeah. What a way to manifest manifest something.
Yeah, I had really gotten into Miles' music. It took me a while to get into Bitches Brew. I think I was with my freshman year at Columbia. It had just come out.
Mm-hmm.
Really got down with it until the following year. I think it was sophomore year. I was listening to it, but I was still more into albums that were a little bit earlier. Miles in the Sky, I had that, and that affected me.
Yeah.
But Bitches Brew was more of a stretch. But then I was in California. When I was in San Francisco, I was really hearing that music in my head and doing it, and it was I didn't really have the right band to play that stuff with at that point. And Michael wasn't playing live with that. He was still playing with Santana.
Oh, okay. Well, in fact, we know you mentioned and alluded to Michael, drummer with Santana. You've also played with a wide range of fascinating musicians. And I'm just going to give everybody a bit of a who's who. There's Gil Evans, Al Foster, the fantastic Buster Williams, Woody Shaw, Billy Hart, T-Bone Walker, of course, Michael Shrieve, Michael Brecker. It goes on. So it must be really great to be able to play with those people.
Oh, yeah. I was, that was in the late 70s in New York when I joined Miles. It was a really special time. I had my band back then. We played around Manhattan, and Michael Shrieve was living in Manhattan at that point. He had moved from San Francisco, and he played in my band for a while. We had a summer gig on the Upper East Side, which actually I released a CD from. Kevin Shrieve, Michael's brother, who played in the band, and he found a cassette recording, and it was actually recorded pretty well.
Oh, okay.
I had a band that summer. We were like a club band. We played a lot of stuff. We played Michael McDonald music. We played my originals.
Yeah.
No vocals. It was all instrumental. And we had the whole summer there at the weekends at it was called EiC.
That must have been fantastic. So you made these fascinating connections with all of these different people. And I also know that you toured in Europe and with some really major jazz festivals in Vienna, Nice, Paris, Stockholm. And you were a member of what people would very much know, the Children on the Corner. That's the sort of the Electric Miles thing, right?
Yeah, that was Michael Henderson's, sort of, I guess you call it a reunion or tribute band. I don't know, I'm not really sure, but with members who had played. We did a concert a few years ago in Milan with the actual members who had played with Miles, were myself and Michael and bassman Patterson.
Okay, the Who's Who continues on. You had to pick one of your fondest musical memories of that period. What would it be?
Well, playing with Miles would be the main, strongest, life-shaping memories for sure. I remember the first night I played with him extremely well. Mm-hmm. And what he said to me, "Are you just white or can you play?" I said, "I'll leave that up to you, Miles.
Listen and decide." Yeah. Now, that's great.
And, at the end of the night, between the second set and the third set, the roadies came up to me and said, "Who should we set up for the third set, Sam or Sonny?" And Miles goes, "Set up for the white boy."
Yeah. Eccentric, wasn't he? Very eccentric character.
Yeah, well, the next, I remember waking up the next day and walking around Boston getting something to eat somewhere. And I was just walking, it was like on cloud nine.
Yeah, I can understand.
It was an incredible feeling.
Yeah, fantastic to be able to have that opportunity.
And, I think the recording of that night was available online as a bootleg.
Oh, really? Wow.
Yeah, that particular night. There was a Japanese thing, a site I saw that said Miles meets Sam. It's got a picture. I'm not in the picture. I think it's just Miles. Yeah. But it was released in Japan, the bootleg.
Well, it just shows you the global influence that Miles Davis had. As you said, to be part of that whole gig and that scene was very special. And it does shape people's lives. It's an important thing. If I move forward to the present and your life over the last decade, you've been producing some really, really fascinating music yourself. You've also, I asked you to send me some tracks, and we've chosen 3 between us. And I'd like to start off with one of them, which is called Peekamoose Blues. Now, firstly, why did you call the track Peekamoose Blues? And secondly, give us a little bit of an understanding of the track before we hear it.
I used to drive through Peekamoose a lot to play with friends of mine that lived on the other side of the mountain. I lived in the mountains. And Peekamoose is a very beautiful area. And there's a spring in Peekamoose that people swim in. And the track is kind of named a little bit after that. It's not a blues, actually a blues. It's based on 3-4 bar phrases. And
okay,
when I play with people, there's people I've actually done some gigs with where they wanted to do that song and they had trouble doing it because a 3-phrase thing, people feel like everything should be 4,
Yeah, it's actually very intricate, this piece.
But 3 really makes it and 4 doesn't.
Yeah.
That was the key. And the guys I recorded it with had no problem with it. Mark played it great the very first time. Plays a solo on it too. I used to go through Peekamoose a lot, and it just kind of inspired me to write a song. And it took a while to put this song together, actually. So it wasn't written on the spur of the moment. It's fairly complex.
It's sort of developed. Well, yeah, it's very complex. So let's have a listen to that now. Is that okay with you?
Yeah, sure. Great.
Okay, well, there's 7 minutes and 54 seconds of a lot of complicated elements in that, Sam. It's very intricate. Well done.
Thank you. That was my son's favorite song off that CD.
Good taste.
Yeah, but he likes it's the regular, more straight ahead progressive jazz.
I like it. It does it for me.
Cool. I'm playing an actual sax solo on that, by the way. It was a 1927 or 28 King sax solo with a it's mostly straight, but with a curved bell. Like Roland Kirk used to play.
Old is that right? What year is that saxophone?
It was from the late 20s.
Wow.
I wish I still had it, but it kind of bit the dust.
Oh,
it was old and fragile.
It had a really sweet tone.
Yeah, it's hard to duplicate that tone. Right now, I play a soprano sax, and I endorse the Dakota soprano that Peter LaPlaca has so generously given me to use. Mm-hmm. And they've been very supportive. Dakota saxophone.
Yeah, that's a well-known brand, right?
Yeah, I think Joe Lovano is with them now as well.
Yeah, and there's, from what I understand, it's not just what we would call your mass-manufactured Yamaha.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's
a little bit more attention to the production of these fine instruments.
Yeah, there's a lot of saxophones around now that are very good, but it's excellent, and it has a nice dark sound. I use the same mouthpiece though that I have since 1971, I guess. So that's the thing that never changes. Yeah,
I think what my point was that you can go onto a lot of musical websites and pick up a well-known branded saxophone for $300, but that's what you pay for.
Mm-hmm.
If you want, it's a bit like, you want a Stradivarius violin, you got to have the quality to go with it, and it makes a difference in your playing, doesn't it?
Yeah, you're limited or enhanced by your instrument.
Definitely. I want to move on to this next track. When you sent me them, I thought to myself, well, with all of them, but this one really fascinated me, the title, Eternal Hexagon. I thought, what a great name for a track. And, my mind sort of exploded with all of these different ideas about what it might be. But I'll leave it up to you to explain what was the inspiration for that name, and tell us a little bit about the track and any particular points you'd like to raise with it before we listen to it.
That track I actually put together and wrote in my computer, in my laptop. I didn't, some of the tracks I've written previously before that, songs I've written, I wrote on the piano, I wrote on the saxophone. This was done with a computer keyboard. And I don't remember how exactly I put it in. I probably put it in out of time, and it just worked up from there to eventually becoming a track. And then, at a certain point, I put the saxophone on and had to copy what I did, which was not that easy, actually. I was still, learning how to work on the computer at that point, learning all the ins and outs. And the title came from the fact that it was kind of a geometric line. And it goes through a few different versions of it. I think there's 4 different lines that I put together, and it was kind of a mathematical sort of method that I used to do it, and that's where I came up with the idea of a hexagon. And I thought about triangle. I thought eternal triangle, which was a complex line, that famous song that Sonny Stitt did. And I thought, well, eternal hexagon maybe, as opposed to eternal triangle. It's kind of like a even more complex way of putting something together using the computer. And I remember when I actually got the saxophone on, it wasn't easy to overdub and get it all right, because I didn't actually write it out. I just played it by ear with the track. And eventually, I think I think eventually I put the notes down on paper because it was because we were going to play it, and when I did a gig in Cleveland, I was going to play it with a band out there, so I had to put it down. But I overdubbed it by ear, and I remember when I first heard it all together, I said, "Wow, this is really cool."
Firstly, a cliche, but it's like you did reverse engineering. You went from the computer then through to the instruments, which is fascinating. And I know that you've been working a lot with electronic music, and you're also well known for that as well now. This particular track, when I heard it the first time, and you sent it actually, it was interesting for me because I'm a bit of a sci-fi buff.
Uh-huh.
So there was, I thought to myself, this is a track that could be really would work well on a sci-fi movie. that for me. So is it okay if we have a listen to that now?
Sure. Great.
Yeah, let's listen to that. really like that track. It's very evocative. I maintain what I said. For me, I could also hear that on some sci-fi film or in some great new video game or something about, you know, space and the universe. And but absolutely fantastic. I love it. Absolutely love it.
Cool. Well, I did a CD called Dark Matter, which is all inspired by watching the Universe show that Morgan Freeman used to narrate.
Oh, yeah.
And I did a whole CD based on that. That was my first CD that was all done in computer. That was about 7 years ago. It took me about a year to do because I was learning how to work in Logic at that point. And if you like these, I have a new CD that you haven't gotten yet. It's going to be released pretty soon that I did for a book.
Right. Oh, tell us about that.
I did it for a story written by Anna Donias. It's a children's book, and she commissioned me to write music for it. So I did 4 or 5 songs for that. I did 4 now, plus we're using Nima with she's going to use that, which she introduced me to the vocalist Mapumba. So we're going to include that as well, even though that was on my last CD. It's going to be on this CD as well. And, there's one track on there that's would be terrific for I hope it doesn't scare the children, but it's very sci-fi. And I can send it over to you after it gets released, which hopefully will be in a month or so.
Yeah. And I certainly encourage people to watch out for that as well, who are listening. Makumba, South African?
Yes.
Tell me about Makumba. That just remind me, maybe.
Mapumba Chilombo. He's in South Africa. He's a singer-songwriter and plays guitar.
Yeah. He's got a really interesting voice.
Yeah. Very interesting voice. I spent a while working on his track, just getting the balance. When you're working with a vocalist, the most important thing is just the volume balance. It has to be perfect. So I spent a lot of time with that, and I was really happy with that particular track.
I've heard him, and he has one of those voices that once you hear the voice and you know his name, you can identify that voice to him. It's not like he sounds like somebody else.
Yeah, he has a very unique voice. It's super deep, resonant, and like phenomenal. When I first, I don't remember what Anna sent me something. She had done some reviews with me, and she sent me some track of his or some link that I heard him sing, and I said, "Wow, I want him to record something." And I looked through the music that I had, and I had this one track that sounded like it would be great with the vocal, and I said, "Let's send it to him and see if he wants to do a vocal over it." He said, "Okay, what would you want?" And he gave me a choice, and one of them was a love song. I said, "Yeah, make it a love song." So it's in 3 languages. I think it's in Swahili and French and English.
Oh, beautiful. Well, again, I encourage everybody to look out for that. You may be hearing this podcast after the album comes out, but look up Sam Morrison's name on Google. Just Google him, and I'm sure it will get you through to... Well,
it's also on my How Revisited album, which is available on CD Baby. I haven't really put it out. I don't have an album a record label. Other than my own, I don't have a commercial record label.
I really appreciate indie artists because remain true to themselves. It's a courageous thing to put out your own work, and it can be tough sometimes. But if this podcast can help in any way, I encourage everybody to go and listen. Mm-hmm. I want to move forward. There's another thing that's really exciting. I know you've been involved with, but you're developing it, and we've got a track that we're going to play. Tell us about, your part in this trio called The Leap, and do some name dropping, please. Tell me who's in this trio and what you've just recently done over the last 12 months and what you hopefully are planning to do. I hope you are in the future.
Well, this is a trio. We played in Seattle at the Royal Room last September, a year ago. It includes Patrick Gleeson doing synthesizer. We were doing the...
Is that the Patrick Gleeson from the Herbie Hancock? And
yes, exactly. He's the guy that introduced electronic music to jazz. He's generally credited with doing that back in like maybe 1971.
Wow. Okay.
With Herbie, he had played live with like 4 off 2600s, I think he was using. And I met Patrick in 1974 recording with the other member of the band, Michael Shrieve, who is the original drummer from Santana, known as the Woodstock drummer for his phenomenal solo in the movie Woodstock, and of course at the site, the original 19.
He was young, wasn't he?
19,
at the time?
I think. They were 18 or 19.
Yeah, he was a real powerhouse.
Yeah, he's a natural and phenomenal. And he played with me in New York with my band in 78, or I think it was 1978. But I had recorded with him in 74 with Patrick in San Francisco. I explained that's how that was right before I joined Miles, and that was my connection playing with him.
Oh, okay.
Band. And so we just did we did that concert in at the Royal Room, and we recorded it. So it was a good recording, 24 channel recording, and it was our first. We had 2 days of rehearsal. Really, only 1 day of rehearsal. The first day we were ironing out technical difficulties. Second day we rehearsed, and the third day we were played the live concert, and it was phenomenal. It was really, really great. And it was the first time I had played to play live with Michael a lot with my band. So it brought back memories of, back when I was like 25 years old.
There was that automatic sort of muscle memory between you where you just reconnected.
Yeah, it was really magical. I think that whole night was great. Well, it was like a Thursday night. And
so you said it was a Thursday night, but it was a full house.
We did get a standing ovation.
I did a little bit of research and I looked it up on the internet, and it was definitely well received.
Yeah, well, I've been looking to do it again with them. I'm hoping that that we could do some playing maybe in Europe.
Okay.
And we did. Patrick and I did another show in New York earlier this year, but Michael wasn't available, and he sent Lenny White to take his place, and that was great.
Well, that's a good choice.
Yeah.
So it's exciting to think that we could have the three of you over to Europe and, playing in festivals and things. And I think people, whether it's the general public or the industry, you sent me a track and I'd love to play that. It's called, I hope I got this correct. It's entitled Seattle IATT. I assume is an abbreviation. But it doesn't matter what the abbreviation is. And I think that the key is that there's these three absolutely stellar musicians on this track. And is there anything else you'd like to say about it before I play it?
Well, we played for whatever, an hour and a half that night. And Patrick edited it down a little bit, I think. And this is, we were playing the music that had been inspired by Miles Davis, In a Silent Way, and from Bitches Brew. So this is
with only three musicians.
Yeah. Well, Patrick's got he's got a 16-channel setup on his keyboard. It's very complex. I don't have I do electronic music, but I didn't really get any idea of how it all worked. But he's got some sort of magical interface with lots of foot pedals. And he's able to initiate and control all kinds of stuff going on, and that's what we did. And plus, communicate with us, and we play off each other. And Michael's over there, doing his thing, just making it sound good. I love the way he does that. There's no ego involved. Just the way he lays the beat and handles it. Michael's been doing electronic music drumming since the beginning, since the 70s or whatever. Yeah. With Klaus Schultz and Patrick and all kinds of people. And it was kind of like a spur of the moment kind of thing, because we didn't have much time to rehearse. Like I said, basically 1 day of rehearsal. And Patrick had been working on this music for a long time, getting it ready. It's, so his setup was very complex.
Patrick's doing all of this behind the scenes and says, okay, and then you two guys walk on, you get rid of the technical problems, and then you just basically get up on stage and it all comes together.
That's exactly it. It just kind of
Wow.
magically happened. We have no idea what it was going to sound like at the time. Luckily, we had a really good engineer, got me a really nice sound, and gave me a better wah-wah pedal than the one I was using. The music just kind of glided in and out of wherever it was. We had no idea. It was totally spontaneous, really.
Okay, well, listen, on that note, let's listen to it, okay? I love that from the beginning to the end, Sam.
Great.
It's really good. I'm excited for you and the possibility of this trio, The Leap, being heard live in Europe. I really, really appreciate you spending the time chatting with me and sharing all these wonderful stories so that more people get to know and appreciate you. And in my research, I have to say, you know, you're what I call a fascinating personality. You're actually, a lot of people don't know this, but you're very multi-talented. And sometimes I think we have to finish on something that people would go, really? So we're going to finish on something different this time. I understand that you're a pretty good sportsman as well. Is that correct?
Yeah, I play some sports.
Oh, very, very shy here. You play some sports. Now, do you by any chance play tennis?
Yeah, I play tennis.
You do you? Did you play tennis to a particular level?
Yeah, I think I was. I mean,
in other words, what that means, everybody, is that you've got to be pretty good to be a tennis coach.
Well, yeah, I was like a county champion of. I lived in Orange County with about 500,000 people.
Thank you for sharing that. I don't know whether in the future you should walk on stage with your sax in one hand and a tennis racket in the other. But that would be an interesting thing to be able to tell a little bit of a backstory as well, wouldn't it?
Yeah, well, it's kept me in shape for a long time. It helps give me the endurance to play long gigs on saxophone and blow hard.
People sometimes don't appreciate how energy sapping it can be to do live gigs.
Well, yeah, well, the setup I use requires a lot of wind on tenor, but I don't do much, haven't been doing much tenor as of late, although there's a few tracks with tenor on it on my CDs. But I I generally start out with the hardest reed of 5 that you can buy, and then I take a little bit off of it. I have my own little technique.
I think most people just perceive it like cutting your fingernails, type of thing. But,
no, there's a certain way I found that makes the reed really speak on tenor.
We'll call that one a trade secret.
Yeah, that's a kind of a trade secret. And soprano, I also play a hard reed as well. But it was soprano is so much smaller; it doesn't require the same amount of overall air volume, I guess, as tenor. But the soprano can tire you out as well if you don't have the if the setup is too difficult.
As I said before, it can take a lot of energy. So I can actually understand why tennis has been important to you, to keep you physically fit, to be able to perform to the best that you can on stage.
Mm-hmm.
It leads me to just say thank you so much for spending quality time with me. I will include all the information about Sam in the show notes, about his record label, where you can find his albums on CD Baby, and all the links that are necessary so that you can. And hey, I'll do something else. I'll also add Sam's Facebook page, if that's all right with you, Sam.
Oh, sure.
So that people can maybe connect with you, fans, potential jazz festival management, or clubs in Europe or whatever, and see how that goes for you. But once again, it's been an honor to share this time with you. I really, really appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Yes, I'm really honored that you gave me the time to do this and play my music. Thank you very, very much, Nigel. Really.
It's been a real pleasure.
Same here.
My name's Nigel J, and thank you for stopping by. And I look forward to sharing with you again soon.